Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group. This time with our roundtable and partner, Veterans Legislative Voice. October is Breast Cancer, Mental Health, National Disability, and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Today is Saturday, October 8th, 2022. Our host is Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, the co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith, and our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Honor Productions. And we have a partner on the line, Ms. Stephanie Kalota. She is a U.S. Army Reserve Sergeant First Class, veteran and founder and creator of the Veterans Legislative Voice. We're going to talk about reproductive rights for military and veteran women. How you doing, Stephanie?
Doing great. Have had an exciting 2 weeks because I joined a bunch of other women veterans and their organizations in D.C., and it was under the name Uniform Access. And we got to meet with legislators on the Hill, got to meet with their staff, did a march, did a press conference, and then I joined today for the Women's Wave for reproductive rights.
And today across the country, there are a lot of protests going on. Talking about women's rights and also women's privacy and also right to choose. So tell us what is going on with the movement today, and then we're going to talk about, as always, we're going to talk about both sides of the conversation. But what do you want to tell us that's new and has developed recently?
Well, I'll start at least for the beginning because of Dobbs. So because of Dobbs, there's estimated about 40% of all military members with the capacity to give birth, because we're trying to be inclusive, are located in states with highly restrictive abortion bans. You know, our military don't have a choice of where they live. They have to request permission to travel outside of 400 miles. They also have to be specific of why they are traveling. If the unit or command finds out that they lied, they can get in a whole lot of trouble. Mm-hmm. But this means that you have to disclose intimate details about your lives to people that don't necessarily have to need abortion care, which is men, because 84% of the military were born male. Mm-hmm. So a lot of them, I'm sorry guys, a lot of men have issues with understanding the full complexity of reproductive health.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of guys do, myself included. I don't really understand the whole conversation. I understand certain parts of it. One of the things that always is a question, and people that are pro life, for example, will always say that, well, abortion is murder. You're killing a child, an unborn person. So why is that? Yes. Why should you have the right to do that? But then the question then becomes, when is a fetus or a cell actually life? That is a topic that it seems like we really don't. It seems like when people talk about this issue, it seems like that's the conversation that always gets side-swiped or kind of sidestepped a little bit. We don't really dive into that 100%. So it becomes an either-or question or either-or conversation. Is it about privacy, or is it about saving a life, or is it about murder, or is it about women's right to their own doing what they want to do with their own body? One question I have based on what you just talked about, which is, today in the military, if a woman joins the military and becomes pregnant while in service, and they're not married, they're not, it's not like they have a spouse living on base with them or on post with them, they're just a regular woman, doing their service, maybe they're deployed and they get pregnant, what happens?
So it depends on their activated orders. It depends on a lot of things. It also can depend on who the father is, because adultery is still a thing in the military, and many people have been persecuted. Typically, the higher echelon leaders have been persecuted for those, at least, because they were try to be in sexual relations with their subordinate spouses and things like that. But yes, abortion or adultery is still a thing, and those type of things can happen, and it's pretty scary when that happens. When active duty or activated reservists and National Guard, and also activated active duty people, if they're on deployment orders, they can very likely get persecuted, because General Order number 1 is don't have sex. And of course, majority of the time that gets persecuted about this are women. I will say it does not happen very often. It's rare. They typically do it if it's somebody that already had like a bunch of other things against them. But it also depends on what the doctors say, because they will get the medical records to find out the age of the fetus, of how many weeks along, and if the fetus is not as long as it was while they were on those orders under General Order Number 1, they don't get persecuted. But that is still a thing, and that scares a lot of people.
So women in the military really can't get pregnant, can't have an abortion either.
They can. The DOD provides abortions when it's rape, incest, or in the if the mother's life is in danger, life and health are in danger. That is when it comes in. Now, I got to point out the rape and incest portion. It's estimated that 1 in 4 military members that identify as female are sexually assaulted during their career, over the whole course of their career. Yep. The most targeted group of sex predators go after those that identify as female, 18 to 24, in their first contract and holding the rank of E4 and below. Guess which group are less likely to re-enlist or not complete their contract? The same group. Now, the thing is, with this demographic, we have, the Sexual Assault Prevention Response DOD team had just released a report, and it said that almost 36,000 people in the military were sexually assaulted last year.
Wow.
Only 8,800 sexual assault reports were filed. Guess how many abortions were performed overall?
I have no idea.
14.
Wow.
14. So that means there's a severe disconnect within the military with their medical care. They're either being turned away, they don't know whether it's available for them, or they do not trust their medical providers with a sensitive situation. And this is scary because these numbers are pre-Dobbs, pre the overturn of Roe v. Wade. We don't know how this is going to affect after this just yet. So it's pretty scary of everything that's going on. The DOD is not even investigating or trying to find out, or at least they haven't revealed to us that they're trying to find out why only 14 were performed. Sorry, I'm getting really angry about this because a lot of time, because as a woman that wasn't served in the military and have actually stood up for many of my soldiers before when they have to go get medical care, is that they're medically gaslighted. And it happens a lot. And the problem is that they don't know how to or identify it. They don't know how to get help. And a lot of times they need to speak to a patient advocate. Patient advocates are in military hospitals and VA hospitals. If you believe that you're not given the care you deserve, if you're being medically gaslit, or honestly you just have a really terrible doctor that is doing very bad things, report them. The VA just became required to have these complaints done online. So then it is tracked online. Before that, it was all behind the scenes paper. I don't know if this is the same for the DOD. And for me, this is very important because that lets us know where all the issues are happening. They can track this. You know me, I'm a data nerd. And all this information can come out so then they can better serve our service members.
So what do you say to people that still have the question, is it murder? Are you taking the life of an unborn child? Or is, for example, there's a website called GotQuestions.org. Now, this is a Christian organization. They state in their explanation, abortion is killing based on a mother's unilateral judgment and choice. Such unprovoked killing of the defenseless is unethical and should define abortion as murder in any society, unless the fetus is not human. So how do you take that into consideration?
To me, it all depends on what a person believes. I was raised on very similar principles and very similar thought process until I became older and had to be in the same situations. And to me, that's one of the reasons why there is such an issue nowadays, is that there is an empathy gap, which explains the reason why men may not understand the reason for reproductive health. For me, it's a fetus. And then when the heartbeat, quote unquote, heartbeat happens around 5 to 6 weeks, doctors have said that is just a clump of cells that have not yet actually formed a heart. It's it's just like your brain with the neurons punching back and forth, and just with all these cells pumping. So it's not a live baby or a baby until it can come out of the woman and be live from it. To me, that is when that's a live baby. That's something. It is murder to kill a child that actually comes out of the woman or the person that can give birth, comes out of there, and that's life.
So would you say then? So would abortion then be? Would you be okay with an abortion then, at say at month 8 or month 7 of a pregnancy?
See, that's when it gets a little sticky. The thing is that majority of those abortions that happen in that time frame, it's because the life of the mother and or the life of the baby or the fetus is in danger or in severe pain. My frustration with a point that Senator Lindsey Graham pointed out when he put in a bill for a nationwide 15-week abortion ban with 0 exceptions. His reasoning is because that is when a fetus is supposedly pain capable. My issue with his thought process is that if a fetus is so underdeveloped or poorly developed and they can feel the pain that they're having, that will be an excruciating death. To me, that is much more evil than anything. Is to make these fetuses go through that, and it's terrible and it's scary and it's very frustrating. I like to believe more in the Judaism thought process. They believe that life begins at birth. That is their first breath. From there, it's then on it, and that child is supposed to hopefully survive through that. To me, that is what is important.
Like, so it's my personal thing. I like to see what science has to say. I think honestly, I know science has been quiet on this topic for the most part.
It's been conflicted. Mm-hmm. It's really been conflicted. And then in Florida, the temples here in Judaism, temples have been filing lawsuits against Florida for the 15-week ban because they believe that it's in violation of their beliefs, which is a interesting conversation against those that are Christian. There's a lot of doctors out there that also are Christian doctors. They're Jewish doctors. There's atheist doctors. So you get a lot of conflicted beliefs and theories and statements.
So what's going on right now with the legislation? What are women's rights advocates doing now to try to, if nothing else, restore back what Roe versus Wade had provided?
Well, first let me add that the VA, since Dobbs, the VA Secretary Dennis McDonough had put in an interim rule. Prior to this, the VA could not perform any abortions nor give abortion counseling, which is very frustrating in states like myself that allow medical exceptions for abortions, but they couldn't get that from their primary care doctor if it was a VA doctor. So he changed that. So it now mirrors the DOD. So they allow abortions for rape, incest, or it's for the life or health of the mother. There are a lot of Republicans that are threatening lawsuit on this, and I know for at least a few of the Democrat representatives in the VA committee, they say bring it. I'm waiting for them to actually throw down the line. But so that's been running through and going a little bit haywire right now. There's 2 bills that the women advocates are fighting for, and it's the access to contraception for the VA and for the DOD. Right now, because of Obamacare and a few of the other advances in health care insurance and things like that, civilian women and those that with the capacity to give birth can get contraception for free. People of the military, family members of the military, people that veterans and the veterans' families must pay for it. So that's the first thing that they're still fighting for. This was originally part of the Debra Sampson Act that got tossed out by the Republicans when the NDA of 2020, I believe, was put together and approved, because it was originally part of that. So they're still trying to get that approved. After that is the March Act. The March Act is to basically protect the reproductive rights of those with capacity to give birth, and have it more to the judgment of the doctors. If the medical doctors believe that this is a decision worth going, that's what they go with. It's the problem is that when we add so many limitations without the advisement of medical professionals, we create so much of a gap that it could actually leave a lot of veterans in the dark, or military people and veterans in the dark.
So what's the solution? Well, how do we advocate to get, I mean, regardless of how you feel about abortion on that topic, but just regular reproductive health, better reproductive health for women in general, and also just more modern and smarter ideas. You would think contraception would be encouraged because, as we know, people are going to do what they're going to do in their bedrooms. So
right.
What are we? So why are we still behind when it comes to the military?
Because certain people in power do not believe that contraception should be free and freely given.
It's such a small. I mean, something that's so cheap. I mean, there's
right.
schools.
It is. And I mean,
I feel like withholding water. Like there was a warehouse. I'm not going to name the name of the Fortune 500 company that was making their workers work these long, crazy hours and these really strenuous jobs, and didn't want to provide like water fountains. Tell them they got to bring their own bottle of water. Yeah.
And the thing it's so frustrating. Well, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas even said, because of the Dobbs decision and everything, he further added to his statement that contraception and the right to choose who gets married could be in question along the same lines.
I don't see how do they make that leap, though? It seems like a big leap. I've heard that before.
It is.
How do you go from, even, what does abortion have anything to do with? Because you're still not attacking the right necessarily, in my opinion, of privacy per se. That's because privacy, the way the court defined it, is really two separate issues. So it went from a privacy issue to basically a murder issue.
Right. What bothers me is because Roe v. Wade was won because of the right to privacy from the 14th Amendment. And that type of thing, that argument was made. My issue with the Dobbs decision is that they did not attack or properly address the privacy issue either. The privacy issue is also applied to whoever you sleep with in the bedroom. And this was also decided, I believe, with another case that happened in the 2000s. And it's so frustrating because some of the states that allow exception for rape, they require you to file a police report. Mm-hmm. If I have the right of privacy to who I sleep with in the bedroom, I should have the right of privacy of my sexual history of having a rape and not have to disclose that to anyone. So to me, that is just so frustrating and awful.
But to me, the way I read the decisions is it seemed like they addressed privacy to the extent of you have privacy up until you affect someone else's life. So once again, it's getting away from the idea that the question is about privacy versus when does your privacy have a limit? When is there? If you take your partner into a closed room and you kill them, that's murder. The same thing if you're pregnant and you kill an unborn child, that child is a human life, therefore it's murder. But we don't know that's where it kind of fell off, is where we don't know when life begins or when life ends. We'll let the states figure it out. So every state can do their own thing. And like you mentioned, most states that have the stricter abortion rules are going to be in places where there is higher military population. They tend to be in rural areas. They tend to be in mostly red states. They tend to be where military veterans or military service members have bases, whether it be Marines, Air Force, whatever.
Yeah, to me, I draw the line is if the fetus is self-sufficient. A lot of people argue that, when you have a sunflower seed, it's still a seed. It's not a sunflower. Mm-hmm. It has to be planted. It has to be tendered. It has to be grown. And then it becomes a sunflower. So to me, self-sustaining life is where the line is for me on where it goes for whether life or murder. It's very frustrating when a lot of things happen with that type of argument there. The craziest thing is that the anti-abortion movements did not start until the mid-1850s, at least in the U.S., and it was actually originally organized by a bunch of doctors that were not gynecological specialists, which back then were midwives, doulas, what have you. They looked down upon those occupations that had gone through the gynecological subjects. And so that is really the birthplace of it. A lot of people don't realize that some of the founding fathers were actually pro-abortion or pro-choice. And even Benjamin Franklin had made I think 2 recipes of how to bring about of an abortion. His own tonic that he had actually written up and said that would work to help cause that. So if a woman did not want to be pregnant, they could use that. And it was actually a highly regarded United Kingdom book.
Mm-hmm. But then again, you could also argue that, these same guys, a lot of them kept slaves. So, I mean.
Right. Well, no, Benjamin Franklin did. He didn't have slaves, but he believed in air baths instead of water baths.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, but a lot of that. I mean, people. This is another thing when we talk about, and this we might respect this idea, but because of what you do with the legislative voice, the thing of it is, this idea of going always back to the founding fathers as if they had, clairvoyant, supernatural, vision of what life in America would be like in 2020. And they would understand. So let's go back to what the founding fathers intended. Once again, this is not a kingdom where we're trying to honor what the king wanted way back when he gave birth to the nation. No, we are. This is our nation now. We should be doing what should be done right today. Those guys were doing the best they could with the resources that they had back in those times. Those guys did not intend for everything to be the status quo, or even for new interpretations of what they wrote to not be considered today.
Yep, no kidding. And I do want to pivot to one thing, is that a lot of things that happens for women veterans. The top service-connected conditions are PTSD, musculoskeletal issues, depression, migraines, that's me, gynecological issues like PCOS and endometriosis. Majority of these conditions, their treatments are incompatible with a pregnancy. The problem is that there's a lot of damaging effects that can happen when they're abruptly cut off from these treatments, and they could die by not getting these treatments. But then they can also, and the frustrating part is, they served their country, volunteered to sacrifice their lives, developed these service-connected conditions, and now a fetus is more worthy than their own life because of the situation they find themselves in. That's where I get frustrated and where I get very angry, is that my life is chosen over a ball of cells that are not self-sufficient yet.
And the thing is also in the military life in general, particularly in certain occupations in the military for women, it seems that you're putting your body in certain types of risks that may make a pregnancy just not something that will be very viable.
Right, and it's very frustrating. Tammy Duckworth has said that the government was perfectly willing for me to sacrifice my periods, because where she was being served in Iraq, they were not going to have the feminine products that she needs for her periods. So they gave her medications to suppress her periods. And so she did that for the good of the country. And then she sacrificed her limbs. She sacrificed her limbs for this country. And now that they want to take away her right to choose whether to be a mother or not, which of course she is, the first, senator to give birth while she's still in office. And those type of things is a very complicated situation. Don't get me wrong. I love kids. I take care of a lot of soldiers. I really love kids. So I want to make sure that nobody labels me as a baby killer.
I don't think anybody would. The thing of it is that, it is a complicated issue. A lot of people refer to this question today. They kind of relate it to slavery back in the 1800s and 1700s, because it's such a moral question, and it really challenges our ideas about life and who's a person, who's not a person. And then, but also at the same time, it challenges, it's at the end of the day, it's still a question about freedom. It's about personal liberties and what you do with your body and so on. I still have a hard time trying to make that jump from guys like Clarence Thomas and these guys trying to say that, well, now we're going to look at, same-sex marriages. Now we're going to look at, because that to me is a totally different topic. How do we jump from murder to, so now you're coming back to the issue of privacy when you're trying to run from it from one direction, but now you're going back to it into something that's totally unrelated. I don't see that going anywhere.
And these officials don't understand the complexities of medical care. When I was watching one of the hearings that they had a couple of weeks ago, and Lindsay Church from the Minority Veterans of America was there, it was an amazing hearing. So I encourage everybody to go. Reproductive Health, House Committee on Veterans Affairs. And so the the elected official did not understand why a mental health professional needs to be part of the abortion counseling. And I'm like, majority of our veterans, men and women, have PTSD, anxiety, depression. You cut them off from those medications, they can become aggressive. They can become suicidal. I mean, and suicide is already a crazy issue with veterans. And just trying to complicate this, it's frustrating that these type of people don't understand. There was an official from Indiana that thought that you could take a baby out by an endoscopy. Wow. Which you can't, by the way. They didn't understand. And Governor Abbott of Texas...
That sounds about right, though, when you talk about senators. I mean, most people in politics don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't understand economics. They don't understand medicine. They don't understand science. They fight everything. And that leads me to this point. And I believe truthfully, I think honestly, I think a lot of the pro-lifers in politics are just using that as a banner to run under so they can get elected. A lot of these guys are hypocrites. We've Herschel Walker, for example, just got busted because the mother of his child had an abortion. Mm-hmm. He's like one of the staunchest pro-lifers out there. But a lot of these guys are using it as a banner to get elected. They're using it because they know if you stay on pro-life, and you say it on national television, say it on the radio, say it on the social media, you're going to get the conservative right to vote for you.
Yes, and all those that are pro-birth and everything down that road, I said, I hope that your children are not in the same position that I found myself in, and many other women have found themselves in, where they needed an abortion to live, to lead successful, happy lives, and then when they can have kids, they will have the happy, healthy environment for those children.
Stephanie, I appreciate your time. We're out of time today. Stephanie Kalota, the Veterans Legislative Voice. Great for your time. Thanks for all the words and also wisdom that you brought us today, and also keep up the work.
Thank you so much, Sean. Love everybody. Thank you, Glenda.
This is Sean Claiborne signing off with America's Heroes Group. We are going to be back again next Saturday at 4 o'clock. If you want to reach out to America's Heroes Group, we read the address always, but I know the one thing you want to hear about is our website. That's americashg.org. Check us out on our website. Go to YouTube and also see all the things that you have missed in previous episodes. We have an archive of tons of data, tons of information. Our address is 155 North Walker Drive, Suite 4250, Chicago, Illinois, 60606. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.